9 women leading crime organizations. Men have often dominated the history of crimes as bosses, capos, soldiers, and narcissists, and then they traditionally relegate the women to servile roles as prostitutes, shills, dancers, and servers. But then, American crime families have been men-only clubs, and women can be made. In mob movies, females typically portray mothers, wives, siblings, girlfriends, molls, and at best, crime-wise, low-level smugglers. However, that history has changed to a limited but important degree within the past couple of decades, as law enforcement agencies across the globe arrest more and more male mob bosses and drug kingpins. These men receive lengthy prison terms, creating the demand for outside help to run their rackets. In Italy, where its ubiquitous crime is seemingly entrenched for good, this reality has presented opportunities for several women to substitute for or replace men as crime bosses. In today's episode, we'll look at 9 women who broke the glass ceiling and gained a measure of success in leading crime organizations. Number 9. Grace OMalley. Strictly speaking, Grace OMalley did not run an organized crime organization or gang, but then the way that she ran the shipping and trading business as a chieftain of the OMalley clan in the 16th century was not exactly legal or legit. After inheriting her father's title and business following his death, Grace's ships began physically enforcing a tax on ships traveling in the water of her lands. Those refusing to hand over cash or a proportion of the cargo were met with either violence or even murder. Number 8. Ching Xi. Though Ching Xi was also not an organized crime lord, she was a pirate commanding a massive fleet of 1,800 vessels in the early 1800s, manned by as many as 220,000 pirates. She directly commanded 300 of the vessels, with a crew numbering between 20,000 and 40,000. The code she developed for a fleet to follow was strictly civilian enforced. Those who disobeyed orders or raped female captives were put to death. In 1810, when the Chinese government offered amnesty to all pirates, Ching Xi retired from her life of piracy and opened a gambling house. Number 7. Jamaica Thompson. During the height of the 1980s crack epidemic, Jamaica Thompson, dubbed the Kingpin, rose to the top of the Los Angeles cocaine trade. In her youth, Jamaica was kicked out of her home and had to find a way to support herself. She struck a partnership with Anthony Dav Mosley, an older man who ran a lucrative cocaine trafficking business. They later married and had a son together. When Mosley was killed in a drive-by shooting, Thompson was devastated, but then she persevered. In addition to expanding her cocaine trafficking business across the United States, she also invested in Los Angeles-based hair business that sold products to celebrities. For a time, she dated a man nicknamed Cheese, but when they broke up, he ratted her out to authorities. Jamaica spent the next 2 years of her life on the run, but in 1993, her son's 6th grade graduation ceremony was set to take place, and when she came home to support her son, the police were waiting for Jamaica at the ceremony and arrested her. The Kingpin served time in a maximum security prison until 2005, but is now an evangelical minister at Second Chance Ministries in South Central Los Angeles. Her ministerial mission is to show others that they'll always have a second chance in life through God. Number 6. Charmaine Roman. After arresting Charmaine Roman in 2013, Central Florida police learned that she was not just involved in a violent Jamaican marijuana trafficking ring, but then Charmaine was the kingpin. Prosecutors alleged that Roman laundered millions of dollars in drug money at the Wynn Casino in Las Vegas, and through an inactive concert promotion company called Sure Thing Investments, authorities seized 3,200 pounds of marijuana, guns, cars, and $200,000 in cash from her operation. Number 5. Rosetta Coutullo. For several years, Rosetta Coutullo was the de facto Camorra mob boss. As her brother, Rafael Coutullo, the head of the Nuova Camorra Organizzata, or NCO, lived inside a maximum security jail or psychiatric prison since 1963. Although Rafael sent her instructions, Rosetta effectively ran the day-to-day operations of the mafia herself. She had a head for numbers and negotiated business deals with South American cocaine barons by herself. In the early 1980s, Rosetta ordered a hit on police headquarters, but ultimately failed to blow it up as intended. Not long after, a police raid on her stronghold sent Rosetta on the lam. She escaped with the help of a local priest who hid her under a rock in a car and drove her past police checkpoints. For the next 10 years, she was not seen in public. Instead, Rosetta directed mob affairs from a series of safe houses in different cities. After years of searching, the police finally found her hideout in 1993. Tired of living a fugitive's life, Rosetta gave herself up without a fight. However, she claimed innocent at her trial, which was corroborated by her brother and other gang members. In the end, Rosetta Coutullo only served 5 years in prison. Number 4. Fulan Devi. The bandit queen was born to a low-caste family in India in 1963 and was only 11 years old when she was married off to a man 3 times her age, in exchange for a cow. Over several years, Fulan Devi's husband abused her and she made several unsuccessful escape attempts. Eventually, she was 16 years old. Her husband sent her back to her family, marking her as a social outcast. With no other prospects, she joined a group of dacoits of mixed castes in 1979 and took revenge against her abusive husband. The gang dragged him from his home and Fulan repeatedly stabbed him. Although her husband survived the ordeal, fellow villagers avoided him out of fear of retribution. Fulan and the gang robbed upper-caste folks, occasionally targeting fancy cars on highways and kidnapping for ransom. Unfortunately, tensions between the different castes of bandits led to a gunfight, and Fulan was taken captive by those of the higher Rajput caste to Benmai village, where she was repeatedly beaten and sexually abused by several men. 3 weeks later, she escaped with the help of 2 low-caste gang members and a villager. Again, Fulan sought revenge. She formed her gang of bandits, comprised only of members from her caste, and then she returned to the village. However, none of her rapists were there. Frustrated, Fulan had her gang round up all the Rajput men present, about 22, and shot them. She was not immediately caught by authorities, but when hard times befell her gang in 1983, Fulan negotiated a surrender. Fulan Devi spent 11 years in jail waiting for a trial that never came. In 1994, she was released on parole, and not long after, all charges were dropped against her. Fulan turned to Buddhism and ran for parliament. The bandit queen served as a member of parliament from 1996 to 1998, and then again from 1999 until she was assassinated in 2001 for the Benmai massacre. Number 3. Griselda Blanco. Colombian drug lord of the Medellin cartel, Griselda Blanco goes by many names: La Madrina, Black Widow, Cocaine Godmother, and Queen of Narco Trafficking. From the 1970s to early 2000s, Griselda was a pioneer in the Miami-based cocaine drug trade and the criminal underworld, but then she has also transported narcotics to New York and Southern California. Throughout her criminal career, it is estimated that she was responsible for about 200 murders, and she started early. At just 11 years old, Blanco allegedly kidnapped and attempted to ransom a child from an upscale neighborhood in Colombia. When the child's parents did not take her seriously and refused to pay the ransom, Griselda shot the kid. Thus, it's no surprise that Blanco's gangsters and their rivals had a violent way of conducting business, and that violence created an atmosphere of lawlessness, particularly in Miami, that broke out into a full-on drug war known as the Cocaine Cowboy Wars. Blanco's U.S. distribution network brought in about $80 million per month. In 1985, she was arrested by DEA agents and sent to prison, though her incarceration did not stop Griselda from running her cocaine business. Still, almost 20 years later, she was released from prison and deported to Colombia, where she died in a drive-by shooting in 2012. But that's not all there is to Griselda Blanco's story. Check out our next episode on the Cocaine Godmother. Number 2. Edina Arellano Felix. A distant relative of Sandra Avila Beltran, Edina Arellano Felix is considered by the Drug Enforcement Administration to be the world's first female drug lord. As a girl, Edina wanted to become the queen of a carnival in Mazatlán, but because of her family's drug trafficking activities, those dreams were never realized. She began leading the Tijuana cartel after her brother Eduardo Arellano Felix was arrested in 2008. Previously, she worked up for the cartel behind the scenes as a money launderer, which she had done to some degree since she graduated with a bachelor's degree in accounting from a private university in Guadalajara. Now known as the Boss, the Godmother, and the Narco Mother, Edina Arellano Felix has managed to survive the fall of her brothers and the widespread takedowns of cartel bosses in Mexico. Number 1. Sandra Avila Beltran. Called the Queen of the Pacific by the media, Sandra Avila Beltran is a leader of the Sinaloa drug cartel in Mexico. She was born into a family of cartel members, possibly third generation, but was careful to never leave behind any evidence of her criminal activities. For years, Avila Beltran operated without drawing police attention, but in 2001, authorities seized a tuna boat carrying 9 tons of cocaine that was traced back to Sandra and her lover. A few months later, police suspicions surmounted when she reported that her teenage son was kidnapped for a $5 million ransom. He was eventually returned safely, but authorities continued to investigate Avila Beltran. She was convicted of money laundering in 2007 and spent about 7 years in prison. According to some sources, she charmed investigators into letting her apply makeup before police videotaped her transferred to a women's jail.
Thank you for watching, and please do not forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell for more videos on crime stories, notorious outlaws, and historical scandals.